A very good morning to you on this Monday morning. It is the 23rd of June. A bit chilly up here in uh, Cape Town. And if you have joined us, you have joined the fifth connection. And on this channel, we are taking the opportunity to talk you through the storyline of what it means to be mindful. Mindfulness in the life of the follower of the way. What is it? What does it look like? And what does it mean for life and for living? We are looking at chapter 4. We have come out of chapter 3, where the warnings are very stern and great against the danger of getting ideologically locked. The danger of having our minds hemmed in with an idolatry of ideas, or as we say, an ism. An ism as a way of making us an avatar of an ideology. So we're constantly referring to proxies and the experts, and we have no fresh thinking from the biblical text as we study it. The whole of the chapter is a warning and counters, first of all, egoic attachments that we might have, because our ego gets attached to life and living, gets attached to stuff and to people. And part of the dying and rising pattern, which is the fractal pattern that runs through the Pauline literature, showing that it's death and resurrection that is the way to deal with that to which we are egoically attached. That's the pattern for living. We have such an aversion for death and dying, and yet it is the way that God operates in our lives. Jesus left heaven's glory, died on a cross, but he rose again to provide us with the pattern for dealing with what comes at us in the real workaday world, the world in which we live. And now in chapter 4, after he has counted not only our utopian visions of reality and our logger mentalities, our bunker mentalities in chapter 3, he starts out in chapter 4. And he shifts gear here because now he's going into a section in the text which is rather a challenging one. And he's going to talk about the compensation that comes to those who follow this way of life, dying to rise, dying to live. There's beneficial utility. For those of you who are following on YouTube or Facebook, you have the advantage of seeing the graphics that I flash up on the screen. A radio doesn't have that privilege. But in the first 3 verses, he's going to talk again about the importance of connectivity, the importance of relationality, the importance of relationships. So let's go into the text now and see what the text says. Therefore, my brothers, whom I love, Paul says, and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm thus in the Lord, my beloved. Watch how endearingly he relates to these followers of the way. He identifies with them. He calls them brothers, brothers whom I love. In other words, he's saying to those with whom I am identified with as family, and for whom personal voluntary sacrifice finds embodiment in me. In other words, I'm willing to lay down my life for these brothers. I love them because love is an action word. We always think love as a nominal reference. Very crucial that we think of love as a verbal reference. It has to do with that which we personally, voluntarily sacrifice for. We give up something costly for the benefit of someone else. And that's what finds embodiment in Paul. For those I love and long for. Again, that relational dimension, longing for relationship. Now, isn't it interesting that in these 4 verses, from verse 1 to verse 4, he's going to talk about how that elation, excitement, and joy rises around navigating the niggles in our lives, in our relationships, for the greater good. Now, we normally think that the niggles aren't what have any impact on us. And so often it's the niggle that provides a problem. Have you had a sore shoulder, a frozen shoulder, a dead finger or hand? Very difficult to deal with. It's a niggle. And most often, or oftentimes, we don't take note of those niggles. But navigating the niggles for the greater good is what is in view here. He says, I love you, I long for you, you are my joy. That's where the elation comes in. And my crown. You don't put a crown on your feet, you put a crown on your head so that people can see it. Our relationships are like that. They are in the forefront of how we operate with other people because they're constantly checking us out. How do you relate to others? Do you have empathy? Do you exude an aura that draws people, or are you like sandpaper and rough and abrasive as grit? Because that keeps people away from you. Paul says, stand firm thus, because you are loved, you are desired, you are the ones who bring me joy, you're the ones that I'm willing to wear as advertisements for relationality. It says, stand firm thus in the Lord, my beloved. Stand firm in this base reality. He's the Lord of heaven, the Lord of the universe. And Paul says, I invite you to show congruence. What's congruence? Equal standing. Stand firm thus in the Lord. It's like an angled mirror. What does an angled mirror do? If you put a mirror in a corner, that is a 90-degree corner, and you angle that mirror at, say, 45 degrees, you're able to see around the corner. You are able to see around corners because of an angled mirror. Show congruence. Reflect what is on one side of the equation, reflected to the other side. Show congruence. Be an angled mirror with base reality. That's the Lord. And with those who afford me choices. He calls them my beloved. You are the one that afford me choices. When you love somebody, you open up opportunities and optionality for that person to be themselves, not to put on airs and graces and try to be who they are not. To those I am identified with as family, and for whom personal voluntary sacrifice, Paul says, finds embodiment in me. I'm willing to die for them. I invite you. These are the ones I invite to show congruence with base reality. Live in such a way to show that you're in touch with the Lord of the universe. And those of you who do that afford me choices. You are my beloved. You give me optionality as I give you optionality. I love you, Paul says. Those whom I love are my beloved. You see, there's reciprocity here, isn't it? I think most of us, if not all, do not care much for one-way relationships where it's just giving, giving, giving from one end. But we are a lot more flourishing and abundant in our responses when there's reciprocity. And yet love can function in a one-way relationship. But here Paul is showing, I love them. I love you. And you are my beloved. As you stand firm, you become angled mirrors of reality. You show congruence. I invite you into my world. Be part of me as I am part of you. And now he's going to shift on the basis of who he identifies with and how he identifies himself as one who shows embodiment of what his relationships look like. He says now in verse 2, I entreat two women, Eudia and I entreat Syntyche, to agree in the Lord. I want you to note the thought word again. There are 16 thought words in chapter 4. The first one comes up in verse 2, agree. Two women are at loggerheads, Eudia and Syntyche. And Paul says, I entreat them to agree in a greater sphere of reality. Agree in the Lord. In that sphere where they identify with base reality. He's the Lord. So Paul gives affordances of choice. And he says affordances of choice, when we love each other the way we ought, we give greater optionality. And these two women need that for each other and from one another. Optionality for two to agree. Whenever there is a spirit of competition in a relationship, it doesn't do either party any good. Whatever the difficulty here was, it ended up as a relationship that suffered from lockjaw, if you will. And whatever the difficulty was, he says, I entreat you to agree. Now, we won't always agree, but to have a level of graciousness where I disagree with you, but I can still live with you in spite of. I can love you in spite of. See, that's what love is about. Not to love because, not to love if, not even to love when, but to love in spite of. Are you in a relationship this morning where there's a niggle that you need to deal with? Because that niggle is becoming so niggly that it's impacting or impairing your functionality. And you need to speak a good word into someone's life to be in agreement with them in spite of. Today you're going to have opportunities for that. You're not going to get away with just walking away from it. Maybe there's a relationship in your own life where after this broadcast, listening to this broadcast, you need to make a call. You need to be calling somebody in order to deal with a niggle. Do that. Don't walk away from it. Maybe your last opportunity to get in there. That's how passionate Paul was about relationships and for relationships. And so I trust that as you walk with the Lord this morning and go with God this day, as you go in and out of relationships, that you become aware of what are some of the niggles that I need to deal with, where I need to show a congruent spirit, like an angled mirror. I'm in touch with base reality, and I refuse to walk away from a tough relationship that can be solved. Trust that as you walk with the Lord, you may experience His grace and your goodness in his life. Goodbye for now.